Hi, welcome to the channel. I'm Matt and I hang about on the Baldur's Gate Reddit a fair bit, and I've noticed there's usually quite a few players who are new to the series who are maybe confused by the game, 2nd edition D&D, or need to ask for help. I've put this video and maybe a couple of subsequent ones together to provide a basic tutorial with a bit more explanation than the game gives you to character creation and eventually to combat. This one we're going to focus on character creation, making your first character in Baldur's Gate, and these are kind of two of the areas where I see people ask questions the most. We're going to look at character creation for a fighter type character and talk about stats, stat rolling, classes and kits, what multi-classing and dual classing might mean for your character, and your weapon proficiencies. I'm not going to touch on spells or thief skills here, and we're going to just focus on a basic melee character, which is where you might want to start, although that's up to you. Before we dive into character creation, quick, word of warning, proviso. My game might look a bit different to yours, either in the UI or the proficiency names. I'm running the entire series in Baldur's Gate 2 Enhanced Edition with the Enhanced Edition Trilogy mod installed, as well as a tweaks pack from Gibblings 3. If anything is confusing, leave a comment and I'll happily answer. So let's dive into character creation for Fighter McFighterson. So once we've picked gender and a portrait, let's go with the basic one, we get into picking our race. Now each race in 2nd edition D&D has some bonuses and penalties apart from humans. So if we look at elves, for example, they're going to make better archers, and that's because they get a racial bonus to hitting with bows, short swords and long swords, so they can make pretty good fighters as well. They get some bonuses to thief skills, and they've also got a bonus to dexterity and a penalty to constitution. They're also 90% resistant against charm and sleep magic, which is pretty good. They also have infravision, which doesn't make a great deal of difference in the game, but we're going to make Fighter McFighterson a basic human. It's worth saying that other races like dwarves, halflings, they've all got different things going for them and different disadvantages as well. So pick one that either works for you for roleplay reasons or maybe has got kind of stat bonuses that fit with the kind of character you want to make. But we'll go with the basic human for Fighter McFighterson. So hit done on there. And now we go on to picking a class, and this is where you'll start to see kind of the options that will shape your character throughout the game. So we've got a whole list of class here, so let's take a look at fighter first, because that's what we're going to be. So over here on the right, we're going to get a basic overview from the game on what that class means, what it does, any bonuses or penalties we get as part of that class, as well as any limitations and our hit dice. Now the hit dice is the dice the game will roll behind the scenes to determine how many hit points or health you get per level up. It'll also do that at the start of the game as well. So if we look at this, we can see the fighter can use any armour, use any weapons, they can wear helmets which block critical hits, they can get Grand Mastery with any weapon class, and we'll talk about that a bit later on. And they can also get specialisation in fighting styles and allocate 3 slots to 2 weapon style. We'll talk about those a bit later on when we look at abilities and proficiencies. And if we look at some other classes, because there's lots to choose from, let's take a look at something like Cleric, for example. We can see they've got restrictions. They can't use bladed or piercing weapons. They can only become proficient, which is 1 slot in any weapon, and proficient in any weapon style. They can also turn undead, and they get a smaller hit dice. They roll a d8, whereas our fighter is rolling a d10. That means that over the course of the game they'll have less health, but they make up for that by casting divine spells. Let's also just kind of scroll down quickly, and here you can see these classes that are separated by a slash. These are what's called multi-classes. Those of you who play maybe modern D&D with your friends, maybe 5th edition, multi-classing is something you can just do. You pick a level each time, you can go, oh, now I want a level from this or that. In 2nd edition, you pick your multi-class right at the start of the game. These wouldn't normally be available to a human, but that's because I'm running them with the mods that allow them to do it. But so we can talk about it. So with multi-classing, you're going to get the strengths of both classes and the weaknesses of both classes. You're also going to be a lot slower to level up, because the way 2nd edition D&D breaks it down is you essentially have 2 classes at once, and they're both active at once. Every time your character gets experience points, it will be divided by the number of classes you have and given to each of them. So let's say we made a fighter mage, and that fighter mage got 1,000 experience points from a quest or killing a monster. That 1,000 would be divided in 2, and they'd actually get 500 experience points per class. What this means in practice is you'll level up a lot more slowly, but you'll also have the power and the benefits of 2 classes. One thing to consider if you're playing an unmodded game is there is an experience points cap in the game. In Baldur's Gate 1 Enhanced Edition, I think it's 161,000, so you might not be able to get to you won't be able to get to as high a level as a multi-class as you would playing a single class, and that's to balance out the fact that you can become a lot more powerful by having, say, a fighter's grand mastery in longswords and a mage's spells to make yourself, by the late game, functionally invincible. Let's go back up to fighter, which is our other class. One more thing to talk about actually. Humans can also get the option to dual class. Now this is something that is picked in-game, not at character creation, and you pick it from your character sheet. It's going to be a major change to your character and your game, so think carefully before you do it. You'll essentially end up resetting your character to level 1 in a brand new class, and your old class becomes dormant. It stays at whatever level it was at, so let's say you got to a level 6 fighter and then decided to dual class into a mage. Your level 6 fighter still exists, but you don't get any more experience points, and you're essentially no longer that class. You will then have to level up a mage all the way up to level 7, so 1 level beyond your original level, and then your old class will reactivate. You can't get any more experience points or level ups in your original one, but you will get the benefits back. So let's say you had a cleric and you dual class them into something. Once you got past the original level, you'd get your divine spells back. You can make some very powerful characters that way, but it's quite complex. If you do it at the wrong time, you can really hurt your game and potentially permanently cripple yourself. So think carefully before you do it. Maybe leave that for a subsequent playthrough of the game. Let's go back to our fighters. So when we hit done, we're going to get the option to pick a class kit. These were a feature added by Baldur's Gate 2 to the series, and they're now available in Baldur's Gate 1 via the Enhanced Edition or via the Trilogy mod that I'm running. These add kind of flavour to your class, so you get kind of a bit of lore text about what's going on there, and you also get bonuses and penalties that can make your classes a bit richer to play, make your playthrough different, and separate you from maybe just the core class. So let's take a look at one now. Let's look at Berserker. So here we're going to get kind of a big old bit about, what is a Berserker, kind of in the background of D&D, and then we're going to see our advantages and disadvantages. The Berserker, he gets to use the Rage ability once per day. You get 1 use at level 1, an additional use every 4 levels, so at level 5 you could enrage twice. Then we get a bit of a description about what that ability does, and we can see that gives us some pretty powerful bonuses to hit and to damage, as well as to our armour class, and we become immune to a whole load of spells. This can be really useful later in the game, so Berserker is quite a strong class. We also see that we get some disadvantages, so after we finished berserking, for however long this lasts for, 1 turn. We'll talk about that when I eventually do a combat video. In disadvantages though, we can see that once that state expires, we get some penalties, so we become easier to hit, we struggle to hit people, and we do a bit less damage. We can also see that we can't specialise in ranged weapons, so we can only really put in 1 point in there, and we're restricted by our alignment, to anything that's non-lawful. These alignment restrictions won't have a massive impact on your game, given that it doesn't do too much with alignment. These are some of the carryovers from the pen and paper versions. Now, with this character, for this tutorial, we're just going to be a basic fighter, so we'll go back to that one. Here you can see something about dual classing. If you wanted to become a fighter via a dual class, you'd need to have the right amount of strength. So let's click through on our fighter, and now we need to pick an alignment. As I said, this won't have a huge amount of impact on your game. Now, it does say if you stray severely, there will be consequences. This isn't the case except for some character classes, in particular paladins and rangers. 2nd edition D&D has a mechanic for becoming a fallen paladin, and it's essentially a way to make yourself into a really bad fighter. As a paladin, you'll be restricted to lawful good, and if you kill a civilian, for example, and your reputation drops below a certain number, I think it might be 7, might be even higher than that, then you will lose your paladin abilities and you basically become a fighter of the same level. There is a way to recover from it in the 2nd game only, so be very careful if you're playing a class like paladin or ranger, which has an alignment restriction and can only really do good things. We'll make fighter chaotic good. Won't have a huge impact. You get some lore text, so if you're really wanting to roleplay out your character and think about how they interact with the world, this is a good way to kind of have a bit of a guide for that. Now we get on to picking our ability scores. You might see these referred to as your attributes or your stats. So abilities, in here, these are the sum of a number of dice rolls. And the game rolls this for us, and we can re-roll it, and we can also store them and save them for later. This is a pretty bad roll for a fighter with a strength of 9, so let's click through, and the number you're looking for is the total roll, because you can move these points around freely. Let's see if we get anything good. 82. We'll go with that, because we've also got an exceptional strength score that we can talk about. Let's just change some of these around, because with a fighter, our main stats are going to be strength, and we've got a really good one here. Dexterity and Constitution. Dexterity is going to modify your armor class. Constitution modifies your health. He doesn't need intelligence, and we don't really need wisdom. I can't remember if there are any penalties going below these, so for now we'll leave them at 10. But for the sake of illustrating for this, we'll pop those up. Now we're going to have a fighter who's got pretty good strength, pretty good dex, and pretty good con. Strength is going to improve your ability to hit in close combat, the amount of damage you deal, and how much weight you can carry in your inventory. Dexterity is going to affect your ranged hit chances, and also improves your armor class, so it's really important for a character who'll be on the front lines. Constitution, that modifies your hit dice with a bonus, so you get more hit points per level. Also, at high enough Constitution scores, you can get the ability to regenerate hit points over time, but that's only for exceptional Constitution scores over 20, which you can't get during character creation. Those look pretty good to me, so now that we've got those ability scores sorted out, let's go into our skills. And skills are, you're going to see them referred to as proficiencies sometimes. This is where we pick what weapons we're going to use and what we're going to be good with. Now, another proviso, my game might differ from yours here because I've got the tweaks pack that changes some of these around, so your mileage may vary on what you're seeing here. We're going to make fighter use two-handed swords and be an absolute kind of monster in close combat. So let's click on that one and see what this means. We get a bit of lore text telling us about, what these swords are, what they do, and you can see that for different weapon types. Maybe a couple of warnings like the katanas, they're quite rare. So, two-handed swords. Let's see what happens if we put points in here. So you can see I've got up to 4 points I can spend at character creation on a fighter. That's going to vary across classes, so a mage only gets 1 point, for example, because they're not meant to be using melee weapons or weapons that much. So if we look in here, we can see that when I put points in, at 1 point I can use the weapon without any penalty. A really important thing to remember in 2nd edition is that if you use a weapon that you don't have proficiencies in, you're going to get a penalty to your hit rolls and possibly to your damage, if I'm remembering right. So you want to only use weapons that you're skilled in. Once we go up to specialised, we get a +1 to hit, so that's great. We're going to do more damage, and we get an extra half attack per round, so we're striking faster. You can see at Master we get another half attack, so we're now attacking more often. At character creation we can only put in 2 points, even for a fighter, so we'll put 2 into there. And if we scroll all the way down on this list, we get to styles. These were something added by Baldur's Gate 2 as well. These are like weapon proficiencies, but they apply to everything of a type, so any weapon that you use in 2 hands will benefit from points in this style. Single weapon, so anything your character is using in just 1 hand will benefit from that, and 2 weapon style. You can read more about what each of these ones does in your own game. We can see here for two-handed for our fighter, that as we kind of go up to specialised, we get a bonus to damage rolls, a -2 bonus speed factor. And this is where second edition gets a bit complicated with which is a good negative, which is a bad negative. And we also can score critical hits on a 19 or a 20, which means we'll do more damage over time. And we also can go faster when we're fully specialised. That means you'll end up getting more attacks per round. So let's put 2 points in here. That gives our fighter two-handed swords. He's very good with them. He's going to get bonuses to hit and do more damage. And he's very good with them kind of overall, any two-handed weapon. So we go even faster and we get to critical hit more often. Great. So we've done that. At this point, we've pretty much made our character. The only thing we need to do now is pick their appearance, which is the colours they'll have in the game. So let's go for something wacky. Let's make him bright pink. Why not? And also the colours of the clothing. And this is the colours you'll see on their model in game. So, yeah, whatever, that'll do. Once we've done that, we can also pick a voice set. I'm not going to kind of click through all these and make you listen to them all. You can do that in your own time. And then we enter our name. Alright, Fighter McFighter-so, because Fighterson won't fit. So, there we go. That's our character made. Everything's set up to go with our first game of Baldur's Gate. I hope this has been helpful for you. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below. If there's any corrections where I got something wrong, a couple of bits I couldn't quite remember from the rule set, again, leave a comment, correct me. I hope you all have a fantastic time in Baldur's Gate. I've been playing this game for over 20 years now and I love it. And yeah, just enjoy the game. Hope this was helpful and enjoy your adventures on the Sword Coast.